Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and with me in the Rabbit Hole studio today, she is an award-winning actor, writer, producer, and her latest film, Pinsky, is now streaming online. Miss Rebecca Karpovsky. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Jason. Hello.
Thanks for coming. I want to get right into it. We got a lot to talk about, because we're going to definitely talk about Pinsky.
Okay.
And we're talking about some upcoming projects. But first, I want to talk about you. How did you get into this mess? How did you come to filmmaking and acting and all that stuff? And what is your origin story, so to speak?
Talk about you. My origin story. I have an interesting twist of events that happened, you can say. I was always involved in the theater world, in creating and making, and I come from a particularly interesting Russian Jewish family, of which a lot of the crafts and ideas for characters in life formed, essentially, and why I went into theater in the first place. And lo and behold, I guess theater just inherently takes you to film. I don't know. So literally, Pinsky was actually what brought me into the film world. I started
Was
writing.
that your first film?
Yes.
Oh,
Pinsky
wow.
was my first film. It's years, as you know, films take a very long time.
Sometimes they do. Yes.
Sometimes they could take your life.
Yeah.
That sounded horrible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they can take a lifetime.
Right.
Right.
Right. They can take a lifetime, and that's what it feels like in a good way, and along with blood, sweat, and tears. But Pinsky came about right after I finished college, where I was, a media studies, critical theory person, and along with the theater world. And my best friend and collaborator, Amanda Lundquist, and I had this concept of writing a story about my family, and we wanted to figure out what platform. And we're both, I guess, cinephiles, film buffs, and that's our love, and we wanted to do it through film. So we started writing. We just wrote. No film school, no film background.
So Pinsky,
Yeah.
How would you describe the film? Like, what is it about? Give me the Hollywood log line for the film if you were going to pitch this to a studio or something like that.
A coming-of-age story of a woman, first-generation woman in her mid-20s.
So you play the lead character.
I do.
Right. And her name is also
Sophia Pinsky.
Sophia Pinsky. So, and she's got a Russian Jewish background.
Yes.
Grew up in Brooklyn.
No, actually Boston.
In Boston, okay.
Yes, I was actually born and raised outside of Boston in the suburbs.
Oh, okay.
But no, it is not me, but obviously reflections.
So, and because you said this was inspired by your family.
Yes.
So all the names have been changed to protect the innocent, I'm assuming?
And wait, I'm just thinking about it. Yes, all the names. Although
great.
even before the film was released, we already had issues. People were offended, and I guess that's how it is when you release your first big project.
So was this inspired by any particular event in your life?
Yes, the authoritarian grandmother in the film, which could also fit into that log line. She's kind of the inspiration for the whole project, both being a strong figure in the family, but also being a little bit of I don't want to say menace, but a little bit of a menace in the family, torturing and also supporting.
But I'm assuming this is all done with love.
Yes.
Okay.
Love and frustration.
So like Grandma meets Joseph Stalin or something.
Yes. Well, that is actually, I would think that's in the trailer.
Oh, yeah, cool.
I think it is, actually.
But the trailer's hilarious. I thought the trailer was great, and it seems like there's also a bit of a rom-com relationship vibe in there, too.
Yes.
These stories, too, somehow the girl goes to the big city, girl comes back home again. Those stories seem to be like horror movies, seem to be the indie films that hit now. They seem to be very sort of on trend, and it's all about, like, if you're going to do that kind of story, what's your particular spin on it?
Right.
And it seems like what you did was get really personal and really specific with it, which I think is what makes it special and what makes it different from, say, a Jennifer Garner movie from 20 years ago or something like that. So I want to talk to you about how you guys managed to get the film made, because you mentioned earlier that it took a while.
Yes.
How long did it kind of take altogether from concept to finish? Did it take to complete?
Well, we started in about 2014, beginning, maybe even 2013 is when the idea sparked for us. And actually what you just said about this story being so specific that it becomes so universal, we wanted to tell this story that was so specific. that we could share it with the world and not be afraid. So that's the point. At 2014, we were like, well, the world's got to hear this story because it'll be something that they can relate to. Everyone has a grandma and that kind of figure in their family. So 2014, we wrote it, and then we decided that there's nobody else who's going to make this film except us.
Then you completed what, like by 2017-ish?
We finished post-production 2016, 2017. Yeah.
Okay, and then you started like the film festival route and stuff like that.
Film festival route, and then we found our distributors.
And where are they currently?
They're Breaking Glass. They're in Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania in general.
And if you don't mind me asking, like, so because I think that's something probably people who listen to the show or watch the show want to know is like, okay, so I've made a movie, maybe I do the festival circuit, but do I need a sales agent to get it out there, or like how did that whole process work?
Yeah, I wish it was simpler, but there's really no right way.
No, it's never easy. That's for sure. And simple never equals easy. Like
no.
even if it were simple, it would still be difficult.
Yeah, there's no like central hub that tells you what to do. There's no one grant. There's no one company. There's no sales agent pitch that you need to have all the time because, frankly, sometimes they're at festivals, sometimes they're not. Then you make a really niche film like ours, and it's finding that particular company that's ready to take on a niche project that they really know how to sell. So we had to do the search, honestly. We had to really do a lot of digging, a lot of research, and sometimes indie films stop at the festival run, and we didn't want to because even though we knew we weren't going to make the big bucks, if you will, on our project, we knew that we wanted it out there and it to be heard and viewed and watched, whether it's in a small little town in Mexico,
I think I've seen this a lot, and people are doing the festival route. And we cover film festivals, so we actually review them and say, maybe your film is good for this film festival or not right for this film festival. But you have to have a strategy whenever you're doing it, and then there's so much work left to be done. Like even like you've gone through the marathon of making the film, and then you've got to get trying for distribution. So if maybe you get a sales agent, maybe somebody finds you at a festival. I think the festival thing is happening less and less. I don't see a lot of distribution companies, very few anyway, at actual festivals looking for films. But it's definitely the dilemma of the current indie filmmaker. Especially if you've gone through the pain and struggle of making a feature without some kind of a studio backing you. So let's backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
Now, to get the movie made in terms of production, like. How many like shooting days are you talking about? What kind of are you doing a schedule over months and months, or is it like you trying to get it all done in a couple of weeks? How did it work?
Of course, we had the movie, then we realized we needed more money, and so then we pushed it off. Our deadline, 6 months, we couldn't greenlight it. Then we got some more money, and our movie was made for a very small sum, 18 shooting days in the Boston area, which is great because very few movies that are made in Boston are made without Matt Damon, and we were one of the forefront.
So you didn't get Matt Damon or Ben Affleck on the film.
No, they were busy.
You should maybe one of them could have played your cousin, or because Matt Damon looks so Russian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although I got to give it to him, he's Bostonian and he brings it back.
He does, yeah. I mean, a few guys are more Boston than Matt Damon, or Ben Affleck for that matter. He's made quite a few films up there, and it's great because being a New Yorker, I won't say Boston's the enemy. But there's definitely a rivalry because I'm a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
But there's always been like this rivalry between the two towns. But I always think it's done with a mutual respect. And I like stories out of Boston because they're not in New York.
No.
How many times do you watch a movie and you live in New York? You've been living here for a long time. So like for me, when I see a movie set in New York, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there. I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, they're doing that again. I shot there. Yeah. Whereas Boston, it's like, oh, I've never seen this before. Or like, it's kind of new and
it's quaint. It's cute.
Yeah, and it looks a little bit more, for lack of a better word, American, because I've always considered New York to be sort of it's like an island off the coast of America. It's more of an emirate than a city, really, because there's so many people from different countries and stuff here. I always tell people from different countries, you have to go see something else.
Yes.
You have to get outside of New York City because there's no place like here.
Although Boston is very clean. And it has the European sense to it. So
which is nice. It is, and even the subways and stuff are pretty clean compared to here, and the streets definitely. And you do well. It's also like Boston's a little bit like Chicago. Like everything around it is sort of a suburb of Boston.
Yes.
Basically every town in Massachusetts like a suburb of Boston.
You just say you're from Boston. I'm not from the city of Boston, but I say I'm from Boston. So
because people know where that is.
Yeah.
So you said you had it took you had the movie, took another 6 months to raise the money. Were you doing crowdfunding? Were you doing investors? Like, how did that all happen?
We did everything.
Okay.
Anything and everything. Personal and investors who would come on board and give $1,000 here, $2,000 there. We did do a crowdfund. We got about $15,000 there, and then we had to find investments everywhere.
How painful was the crowdfunding process for you guys? Did you do a couple of months?
It's really interesting to talk about now because crowdfunding is more like it's been done. It's this
Right.
was about 3 years ago now, and it was hard. It's hard because you're reaching out to your personal connections, and you also don't want to sound like you're begging, but at the same time, that's the way a film's going to get made. So it was a process. It's a marketing long process.
So what were some of the challenges of the production in particular? Like, once you guys were actually in production, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, funding was still a problem. I think you never cease to have that as an issue because funding is always a problem. So if you can't have one thing, if the DP wants an extra set of lights, that is hard. It's I don't know. There's a lot of communication things that can be issues a bit. You have personalities, but we ended up having an amazing team for a first-time production in Boston, where you're looking for a team that, Boston's not a film city, and you're looking for people working for pretty low rates. People jumped on board, and we really interviewed a lot of people, so that was wonderful. But even then, you have some personalities, or people come in even an hour late, and an hour late is like, $4,000 that you can't afford to lose.
Right, yeah.
When you're making, a very low budget, like ultra low budget indie movie. So like lateness or something would be a huge effect. And changes. I mean, you're living in the moment. We had an incredible pre-production period. Incredible. Like, that's why it went as well as it went. With any mistakes that hit us, we had 8 months of pre-production for a 75-minute feature film is really great.
One of the things that people don't realize, and I've said it on the show before, like, it's not the most fun time, but the prep will save you every time.
Everything.
Like, and also, especially because you're dealing with like a comedy dramedy kind of subject matter, so you're heavily relying on the acting and you're heavily relying on the script.
Yes.
And if that is not there, it's going to not be a good movie. You're in for you could shoot it really great and you could light it really great and the sound could be real. All the technical elements could be there, but if the performances aren't there, if you don't have something like time to rehearse, time to rewrite and stuff like that, because I found that because I've written comedy myself, and it's one of the most challenging things because you'll get different. Like, a lot of the stuff I write is sort of delivery dependent. Like, somebody has to know how to deliver these lines in order for them to land. And if you don't get the right person, if you haven't cast right, or, sometimes I'll write specifically for certain people, but then you can't get that person or whatever. You have that. It's a luxury to have that time to be able to do that.
Right.
But, you're also writing for yourself.
Right.
And you're keeping one ear on the script and one ear on your performance, right?
That's the difficult part. The script itself since it was our first script and we wanted to make this movie, we knew that there were some flaws in terms of building a script and building characters. That was actually really hard to work with because on one hand we were writing for people we know, or at least for myself, but on the other hand it was complicated to find for the protagonist's whole objective and everything, which, as you probably know, the protagonist is the hardest thing to write, or at least it was for us.
Find my biggest challenge is the ending.
Yeah.
Getting the ending, I've heard a lot of people, experienced people say endings are the most difficult thing. But if you're writing a protagonist, and you have your film is a sort of a slice of life type thing, so you have to find where the arc is in that. You have to find
that's really difficult.
Where the story points in that. Is she the same person at the beginning of the movie as she is at the end of the movie? Mm-hmm. And if it's a coming of age story, that answer better be no. She better be a different person at the end of the movie.
Right.
Otherwise, what the hell have we been watching for an hour and a half? So the all of that stuff, all of those story elements come to play, and you need people who know how to execute it. Also, your relationship in particular, because you're not only the writer but the lead actor, your relationship with the director better be solid.
Right.
And anybody can tell you who's done this, folks. Directing and acting, or directing and producing, and trying to work, even if you're friends, this will test friendships. you know.
Absolutely. And we've been best friends since we were 16. So Amanda was the director, I produced. So we did a lot of things together. We really brought the film to its feet. But it was hard, and producing and acting really don't mesh that great. I'll be honest with you. And when you're making an indie film with no funds, you get stuck in a place where you can't, always help your director, and you're the two people who put the movie up.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I kind of the stuff that you're doing, I've seen people do it before. I don't recommend it. I've done stuff like direct myself on camera, and I've done stuff where I've been the producer, writer, director. And, if you're doing a small project, great. If you're doing a feature, get another producer.
100%. I learned my lesson. Really, we would miss out on certain scenes because I was worried about continuity and just the shirt color, and worrying about because we didn't have an extra set of hands, and that was really, really difficult.
Yeah, I just did so I do these seminars in New York called Conversations on Media Production, and one of the things we did was we talked to a cinematographer who had worked on some bigger productions, like big Hollywood productions, worked with guys like Martin Scorsese and Saul Bass, and he was kind of sort of educating the indie folk, the DIY crowd, about like, we know you're making movies, but where you want to do a real feature, there's all of these people in all of these different positions for a reason. There's so many people on a movie set because there's so many things that go into a shot.
Absolutely.
And when and that's why I say, like, the indie film is at a disadvantage time-wise because you're trying to do a feature in way less time than anybody would try to do a feature, and you're also doing it with less people. So in some ways, maybe that makes you move a little faster because you don't have the big leviathan of people, but you're also kind of like hindered by, you don't have a wardrobe person, you don't have a makeup person, or you don't have the person to handle the props and all that, the set design and stuff like that. So you have to think of everything, and meanwhile you're trying to act, which
needs your full undivided attention.
Yeah, ask any
100%.
actor, So like in terms of the character, what was like? So you're obviously, you're playing a character. This isn't just you,
right?
But like the challenges of trying to just be in the moment must have been difficult.
In terms of producing and
like
acting.
trying to be like, just like once somebody says action,
absolutely,
just trying to like be in that moment.
Yeah, it was. I think there were days where I was able to because everything was all set, everything was gliding, and then I could just fall. We have a big Shabbat scene where it's a really big scene in the movie. She goes and terrorizes the rabbi for dating her grandmother. It's a whole epic spiel. And in that day, I was like, okay, this is the day I need to ignore everyone. And then you ignore everyone, and then something's lost for the gaffer, or someone's not getting something. And I'm also like a very big Jewish mother, so I'm really worried when people don't feel taken care of. So that takes my attention.
And constantly feeding everyone as well.
Yes, yeah. I'm very worried about lunch. Not in like just being hungry.
But see, like if you could do this in a position where you had more money and more time, you wouldn't have to worry about those things.
Absolutely, and I would have another producer, and I was just offered another project to produce and act in, and I love the project, but I'm putting it in the contract that once this movie, if it hits a certain amount of money, I'm hiring someone else, week before.
Absolutely.
Before.
Absolutely. The, so recently about a month ago, I guess a few shows back, I had Marissa Vitale on the show, and she had done a very good short film and called Grace, and she was saying how she produced that film and acted in it, but she was saying, like, once we got to production, I handed all the producer duties over to, and this is a heavy drama about a woman recovering from addiction and stuff like that. So it's tough subject matter. So she's like, once we hit production, that all that producing stuff was handed off to another producer, so that and she's like, I know stuff went on that I didn't know about because this person shielded me from that, and that's really what you need. I mean,
absolutely,
because it's hard enough to get a good performance. It's that job in and of itself, and everybody there is to help you. Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. But, it's also the thing that everybody rushes through.
Absolutely.
Tell me if this has happened to you before, for all the actors that listen to this. You're on a set, and you're sort of rushed into place. They rush you into wardrobe or whatever, and you don't get any time with the director, and they're like, okay, go, action, and you feel like, what, I don't even know what I'm doing yet. Like, you haven't had that time to kind of settle in.
I can't count how many times that's happened. When I'm producing and I have to be running around, that happened a few days where it was just really difficult. Amanda, who was directing, was amazing at really trying to protect me, like, to be honest. And that is the key for actors, is having that director who's there to be your partner, your collaborator, and also be your director, So she tried, but in the essence, again, we were the two people running the ship. So sometimes I would come, oh no, that continuity, something's missing, and no one's paying attention except you. And then boom, camera's on.
Like, what am I supposed to do
Just
now?
Lost.
Yeah.
Or you go for it, but you didn't have any of that prep time.
Yeah, and it shows, like, and you have to kind of, like, if you're in that situation, and I've been on sets too, as I've done it where I was like shooting a commercial or something, and I'd be like, hey guys, do you want this lit or what? Like, I can shoot this, but it's not going to look any good unless you give me like a minute to light the scene and get it right.
Absolutely.
Do you want it done now, or do you want it done right?
And that's always the conversation with the DP too. You have no time, and the director and the DP, no time, but we have to go, no time, and the AD screaming, and it's always the case.
Yeah. I mean, so this is your freshman effort.
This is my freshman effort. Yes.
This is Film School 101.
Yes.
This is trial by fire.
This is.
The next effort won't be like this. The next effort, have you made something? Have
Yes.
you made something since? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you about upcoming projects. So talk about this, and I'm hoping it was a better experience for you.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I learned so much, and this film I actually was just the producer. We just shot a film. It's a feature film called Asking for It. It did actually just do a crowdfunder. It's a feature film. It's a comedy for the Me Too movement. Janine Garofalo, David Krumholtz is playing in it, and we have a lot of comedians. It's really timing heavy. So I produced it because we really are working with those folks.
And this is a comedy?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I hear Asking for It, Me Too movement. I don't think ton of laughs. But you're assuming that there's a double. There's like it's a dark edge to
It's a very dark edge comedy
Okay.
with a character reference to a man named Crypto Boner, who's a stalker, who they have to track down to kill him before they kill them. So that's why I say it's an homage to the Me Too movement.
Okay, so we're not necessarily you're not doing a true story about. It's not like an allegory about a Hollywood executive or something like that.
No. It's just it's a girl living in New York City with a stalker.
Okay, cool. That sounds hilarious, but I'm sure it will be. I like Janine Garofalo a lot. I think she's really talented. She doesn't do enough. I think she does more like stand up and things like that.
She's just been in the indie scene a lot because it's hard. It's hard being an older comedian, like a comedian, female woman, and she wants to do projects she wants to do, which is hard to sustain, but she's doing it.
How did you guys get her? How did you guys land her?
So my friend Becky Scott is the writer and co-director of this feature, and she wrote this incredible script that everyone was kind of falling over because it's so relevant, it's so real, it's so timely that it has to be right now. And somehow she got it to the assistant of Janine Garofalo, and the assistant wasn't actually supposed to hand it over. The assistant of the agent. And lo and behold, with luck, and that's how these things happen, the assistant said this is too good to not get into her hands, and it did. I don't know if I can even
Fabulous,
say that.
fabulous. So that's what you got to learn here, kids. It's covert ops like this
No rules.
that make you and it's also it's one of those like it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission kind of situations.
Yeah, it's the way of you should know all the rules so that you can break them.
Right.
All of them.
And I think particularly for something like a female-driven comedy,
Yes.
It sounds interesting. So where are you guys at in that project?
Well, we're just gathering the funds to start editing. So we have the trailer up. You can even see it online.
Where is that online? Tell us the URL.
It's on Indiegogo. If you go to Indiegogo and asking for it, you can see the trailer there. Exclusive.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So the plan for that is you're going to get that shot in 2019, and hopefully you're going to do the festival route again and all that kind of stuff.
So we want to get it done by the festival, South by Southwest and all the festivals. We want to get it going in there. We have really, Gersh Agency, picked up Becky, so that they're really supportive of the film. So that's also a helpful thing for getting Janine Gruffel and David Krumholtz, because they were so behind the script.
Right.
So now they want to push for it to get into the festivals as well.
Fabulous. And I hope you have more producer help on this one. You're not the solo producer?
Yes, there are 3 of us.
Fabulous. That's good.
And I'm playing in a very small role because I was like, no, still not enough money.
But like, yeah, if you're gonna do this, safety in numbers, kids. It's
Safety in numbers.
You gotta have a pack of producers to help you out.
You nailed it.
So for anybody else who's looking for you and your upcoming project, where can they find you on the web?
My name, RebeccaKarpovsky.com.
I was gonna say spell Karpovsky.
Karp as in Peter, Ov as in Victor, SKY, and then .com, and then you can see it there. And Asking For It has an Instagram and Facebook page, and Pinsky has a pinskythemovie.com.
Fabulous, fabulous. So we look for that. When you guys do that movie, come back on the show.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about it. If you do a New York festival, we'll try to interview you at the festival when we cover the festivals. If you want to get Janine down here, I'd love to talk to her.
You know, she might say yes.
Yeah, I mean, she's like a legend to me. Like I am a guy who grew up in the '90s film movement, and like she's part of the soul of that whole thing. Like she's part of the reason why we have independent film.
She does comedy down the street.
No kidding.
On Atlantic. Oh my gosh, what is this? What is the comedy studio? It's a new comedy studio right on Atlantic, not like a few feet from Barclays.
Oh, no kidding.
And now I'm blanking. I apologize.
We'll have to look. I'll have to look that up.
She's there all the time.
Fabulous, fabulous. But yeah, definitely. Tell us more about that, and I'd love to. Help you guys get the word about that as well, because it sounds like a great film. Anyway, I got to wrap up, but thank you for coming once again, and I want to thank you all out there for taking this trip down the rabbit hole once again. For more episodes of this show, you can always find them on our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. You can also subscribe on all the major podcast channels: Anchor, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify. We're on YouTube and Facebook as well, and. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Rebecca Karpovsky. Thanks so much for coming down. It's been fun. And I'm Jason Godbey from Behind the Wrapper Productions, and we'll see you next time.